This is the President McCormack Podcast with your host, Mark McCormack.
And my friends, today on the podcast, we have Dr. Nicholas Howland. How you doing, my friend?
Good. Well said.
This is really fun because I just did your podcast.
You did.
With my wife, Michelle.
Crush it. I love doing the joint podcast thing, like having the two of you on. That was fun.
Yeah, no, it was really cool. So tell my viewers, all three of them, for now, why are you doing a podcast?
Hopefully it's not the same three viewers as I have. I think we're probably about the same level. Dude, so today was the first day of actually recording any of these. We're going to launch in the next 1 to 2 weeks. And I'm a plastic surgeon. This all started with a patient of mine who lost a bunch of weight, and she had a gastric bypass done, lost like 200 pounds. And when that happens, you get all this extra loose skin. Yeah. And that skin can cause all sorts of problems. You get rashes underneath. It's uncomfortable. It's hard fitting into clothes. And you can't fix it with diet. Like, you can tone muscle all day long. You can't tone skin. So she'd had 4 operations with me to remove that excess skin. And insurance almost never covers these operations. So this girl's like $50K plus out of pocket after losing all this weight. And she reaches out to me after her last surgery, pretty distraught. And she said, my husband today told me he still thinks I'm ugly, or he says I'm still ugly, and he misses me when I was fat. And I'm just like, okay, he's an asshole. But she then said, I've got really conflicting feelings here. She says, on the one hand, I'm feeling like maybe I shouldn't have gotten my weight loss surgery, and maybe I shouldn't have gotten this plastic surgery. She says, but on the other hand, like, I've never felt better about myself. Yeah. And she's like, I don't know what to do with that. And I was like, we need to talk about this. We need to, because it's actually not uncommon for any of those things to happen. It's not uncommon to have almost this buyer's remorse with weight loss surgery. Right. It's not uncommon because it's like that old version of you is dying, right? That old version's gone. And it's not uncommon to have guys who are with bigger women when the woman all of a sudden loses all that weight. It's not uncommon for them to all of a sudden get really insecure and be like, oh shoot, I'm not the pretty one anymore, basically. Yeah. And so I was like, we got to talk about this. We got to get you on an Instagram live, or we should do a podcast. And like that, I was like, oh my God, we got to do a podcast. And not just that, we got to do a podcast of your story, and we got to do a podcast of patient stories, like the real human emotion behind plastic surgery. Like what did it do for you? How did it make you feel? How did it change your life, or how did it not change your life? I've got a lot of patients who are unhappy with their outcome, not because I did a bad job, but maybe because they had the wrong expectations, or maybe because it didn't get them what they thought it was going to. Yeah. So that's what this was about. That was the impetus behind it. At least I think it's gonna. Selfishly, I think it's going to be really good for me. I think I'm going to learn to be a better surgeon because I'm going to learn from these patients of what I could have done better. And hopefully it just reaches, I don't care if this thing blows up and gets millions of followers, or if 10 people follow it, but if it helps one person on their road to plastic surgery, or their road to recovery from plastic surgery, then that was worth it. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I think it's a perfect way for people to kind of see your personality and see what plastic surgery is really like. I think there's it's an interesting stigma out there in the world with plastic surgery. Some people are very for it. There's certain people really against it. And there's a whole bunch of people that don't know much about it. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your journey to plastic surgery. Okay. We're both 40 years old. Quite frankly, you're a pretty young doctor.
I think you're 41.
Oh yeah, Bill. Oh, not till October. How dare you? How dare you come on my podcast and call me 41? But yeah, man, let's start. Let's high school. You know, you always wanted to be a doctor from day one. No, I was teasing.
No, I think so. I think kindergarten, I wanted to be the president.
Nice.
And then that quickly changed. And doctor was like on that list early on. I liked science. I was pretty nerdy. Yeah. And I served a LDS mission. Well, first I told my mom I wasn't going to serve, and I did a year at college and tanked. Like, just, I think I failed 2 classes and got a C in the other ones. And I wasn't ready. And then at that point I kind of wanted to go on the mission. So I ended up going. And I came back and did undergrad, and all through undergrad, I worked in commercial real estate. My dad's a commercial real estate developer, has always been a successful commercial real estate developer. My parents had 6 kids. They're both divorced, remarried. So I've got with step siblings and a half sister, and we're all just brothers and sisters. Don't really delineate the steps and the halves, just family. But with all of us, there's 13 siblings. But my parents had 6 kids, and there were 2 girls, 1 at each end, and then 4 boys. And I was the oldest son. And I think that my dad had this idea that the oldest son would always carry on, take over the family business and take over the family name. When I came home from a mission, I went and I got my real estate license. Always proud to say that me and Jimmy Rex got our real estate license together.
Perfect.
He went on to do something with his. And so I did commercial real estate all through undergrad, and I made great money. My dad paid me well. I think I was helpful. I don't know. Maybe I was just the son that was working for him, but I hated it. I hated it. I was a property manager for these properties, and like the phone calls I would get, like, my floor is flooding. Yeah. I don't know what the hell to do with the flooding floor. And I just wasn't my passion at all.
Well, wasn't that company named after you and Tyler?
Yeah. Well, so at first his company's gone through some different names. He had, Eagle Point Financial and Eagle Point Realty, and then it became Howland Partners later on after I had left. But that property management company, was called NTH Maintenance, and then that still exists. Yeah. And NTH was for Nicholas Tyler Howland. And anyway, I fast forward to, I finished undergrad. I had told my dad I'm going to medical school, and he said, "You're an idiot, and I'm not paying for that shit." And he said, "There's better ways to make money," which turns out he's right. There are lots better ways to make money than going to medical school. But it wasn't my passion. I will say though, he instilled in me the idea that if I was going to be a doctor, fine, but you better friggin' understand business. Yeah. A lot of his clients were doctors, and I growing up and still to this day, my dad's, one of his mantras is doctors are idiots when it comes to business. And so when I did undergrad, I kind of double dipped. I had all of my pre-med courses, and I had my degrees actually in business administration. And it's worked in my favor because I've come out and became a plastic surgeon, and my practice is a private practice, and I run a small business. I mean, between my private practice and then I'm an owner in our medical spa and our surgery center, we've got 100 employees. Yeah. And they don't teach you how to do that in med school. Nobody teaches you how to manage employees. No,
absolutely. And I think one thing that people don't understand about doctors is doctors only make money when they're working. Mm-hmm. And so by you diversifying into, a med spa and a surgical center, you're able to have passive income at some level. Not that you're not participating as an owner, but
no, it's real. What's funny, I just recorded one of my first podcast episodes was with Jimmy. Yeah. And he started it off and he goes, "Man, like tell people why you're going to do this podcast, because he brought that same thing up. He's like, you only make money when you're working, and you make a lot of money per hour. So I don't know if you've even thought about the amount of money this podcast is costing you. And I'm like, son of a bitch, I didn't think about how much this podcast is costing me.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it'll be worth it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's all part of it. I mean, the thing too is when you're a doctor, you're also a walking billboard, right? Like everything you do is well, not everything you do, but a lot of stuff you do is going to be recognized, and people are going to judge you if they want to use you as a doctor or not.
Yeah.
Kind of like my favorite billboard you ever did.
Well, that turned a few people away. You want to talk about that, huh?
Yeah, tell us about that. Tell us about your marketing.
Oh man. Well, first of all, let's go back to my first billboard that I put up here. Okay, the first billboard I put up here was my brother Tyler's idea, and it was a brilliant idea to this day. This area around Salt Lake City is right around the point of the mountain is known as the Silicon Slopes. Mm-hmm. Because you've got Silicon Valley out in California, and then I think Austin is known as Silicon Hills. Yeah. And these area, that's Silicon because it's the high area of tech that's coming into these places. And so they named this, we've got some big tech companies that have moved in here over the last 10, 15 years. And so Silicon Slopes. And Tyler, my brother, right as I was getting ready to graduate, he said, I just had this brilliant idea. He said, you got to put up a billboard that says, Howland Plastic Surgery, we put the silicone in Silicon Slopes.
It's brilliant.
And brilliant idea. I think he actually stole it from a ring company. I think the Uro rings down in Provo had a similar slogan or ad. But whatever, they don't do plastic surgery. And so we designed this as one of my very first billboards that we put up. And the way I wanted to design it was I wanted it to be a woman laying down, and then you would see kind of like the curves of her body would be very obvious, kind of suggestive slopes. So you would have like the curvature of her ribs and then the curvature of her breasts, and we put the silicone in Silicon Slopes. Yeah. It took 6 tries to get it pushed through a billboard company. Like every billboard company we approached, like, we cannot put that up. That's too offensive. And we had to change the image. Finally, it became like this stick figure and not an actual person of we put the silicone in Silicon Slopes. And I was like, whatever. I want to put the message up there because I think it's funny. Yeah. And it turned some heads and it was fine. Utah has a very long history of plastic surgeons putting up suggestive racy billboards. Mm-hmm. Like there was a surgeon once, I can't remember her name, but she put a billboard up of it was a picture of different fruit, and it said like, how do you like your melons? And it was talking about breast augmentation. People hated it. Some people loved it, but some people hated it. Yeah. There was another guy who put up an ad. I don't think this one was a billboard. It goes in a newspaper. And it said, I've designed it was a picture of a hunter, and he had like a deer carcass or head. And it said, I've designed a new procedure called the adorectomy. Just a stupid play on words, but he got destroyed over that ad. And it's marketing. If people talk about it, right, it worked. Yeah. That was the whole point. So anyway, this was in October 2020, and I was thinking of, some new advertising to put out there and some new billboards to put out there. And I had this great idea that I wanted. This one was more of a joke. I was never going to put this up on a billboard, but I told my mom I was going to put up a sign that said, I fix God's mistakes. It's humble work.
That's personally my favorite one.
She does not love that joke at all. Yeah. And if you know me at all, and you know I'm about the least cocky person in the world, then I'm completely joking with that joke. So we ended up putting up one though that I came up with. The LDS temple, the downtown Salt Lake temple, had just undergone some reconstruction, and I remember growing up in the LDS church, and I would always hear teachers and leaders tell us your body's a temple. Can't do anything to your body. Don't get a tattoo. Yeah. Don't do 6 piercings in your ears. Don't get plastic surgery. Your body's a temple.
Yeah.
And as bad as that is, this is my whole idea behind the billboard. As bad as that is to tell somebody, God, you should really do something about your body. You should really fix that. That's gross. You should get some plastic surgery. I think it's just as shameful to tell somebody, you know what? Sorry, your body's a temple. You can't have anything done.
Yeah.
You got to live with that.
Yeah.
You got to just deal with that. Deal with your size H breasts that are destroying your back. Deal with that nose that's just causing you severe depression every single day.
Yep.
That's just as bad. And so we put up a billboard that was very tongue in cheek, and it had a picture of the Salt Lake Temple with scaffolding all around it, and it said, "God's remodeling his temple. Isn't it time to remodel yours?" We put it up in Utah County. It was the first place it was going to rotate through.
And it went on fire.
It went locally viral, as I like to say. The first 2 days, I was like, I freaking nailed this. Yeah. I had like 200 comments on my Instagram of people loving the billboard. Yeah. I had this girl who had a big TikTok following, where she put up this video of like, is that allowed? I can't believe this. I just saw this billboard. Is that allowed? And it was a hilarious TikTok. It blew up. It was like her most viewed TikTok that she'd have of all time. Yeah. And then somebody put up a Twitter post. And in the Twitter post, she said, "This is disgusting. This surgeon is body shaming women, telling women that they need plastic surgery." And I'm like, whoa. The whole point went way over your head. You're completely missing it. I'm not body shaming women at all. And as I looked at it, I thought, maybe the wording, maybe I shouldn't have used the word, "Isn't it time to remodel yours?" Maybe I should have said something like, "We can help remodel yours when the time is right and you feel it's appropriate." I understood maybe the wording came across as me suggesting that people needed plastic surgery. But after she put that up, I started getting the negative comments started pouring in. And then I started getting 1-star review bombed. Yeah. And, I was only, 2.5 years into my practice. And I went from a 5-star rating to like a 3.4 overnight. Yeah. And that freaking kills you as a plastic surgeon.
Well, it's wild, right? Because you had a message in your head. You needed to be a little provocative so people read it. Mm-hmm. But the marketing lesson on that is the anticipation of what people are going to understand, the perception.
Yeah. And I completely missed it. I knew I was going to get blowback from church people. Yeah. Right. But at the end of the day, there's some people that just can't be tongue in cheek about their religion. It's too serious. It's too, and you take a temple. It's actually sacred to them. Yeah. And they weren't going to take anything lighthearted well. Yeah. And so I knew that was coming, but I felt like I was prepared for that. I felt like I was going to be okay. And when it became he's body shaming women, it actually destroyed me. Yeah. My girlfriend at the time, if you talk to her, I think I spent a week just up every night, just hands through my hair, reading every tweet, just obsessed over every Instagram post, every word people were saying. I was responding to some of these haters, and I was killing myself over it. Yeah. And she was like, you have got to take it down. And KSL picked up a story on it. I at least got to say my piece about it. And I ended up taking it down. And I, to this day, I don't know if I think I wish I would have kept it up. I kind of wish I would have stuck to my guns, but I also don't know that financially I would have been able to manage sticking to my guns. Yeah. There was one colleague and friend of mine, Beth Clifford. She was actually my breast implant rep at the time, but also a friend and somebody I trusted on what to do. And I talked to her the night before we made the decision to pull it. And she said, I think you should keep it up. And I think you should get on that news broadcast and you should say, there is no shame in plastic surgery and I will not be shamed into taking down this billboard. Mm-hmm. And she nailed it. Like that's become my message since then. And that's always been my message, is trying to remove this shame from plastic surgery. But she really nailed it. And I think I wish I would have followed that advice.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I financially could have withstood it.
Right. And it's hard to be bold, Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, it was hard. It's funny too, because now that it's over, I think a lot of people find it funny, but like in the moment, it's like, these freaking crazies, I'll call them whatever I want, but I mean, one star bomb and you're like, it's stupid.
Yeah. Oh, and
it's
listen,
almost like cancel culture.
Oh, for sure. Listen, there were patients that I know I lost patience over it.
Did you?
But I also know I gained patience over it. There were a few people who posted, just saw this, found my surgeon. And there were yeah, and there were plenty of people who were like, just saw this, F this guy. Yeah. So, and that's okay. When I see patients, I tell them I want patients to have multiple consultations.
Yeah.
Because when you're picking a surgeon, you got to feel like, hey, this is my guy or this is my girl. Like, this is, because we're a team now.
Yeah.
And you got to feel comfortable with that person. And you don't just go to somebody because they've got the best reviews or because your friend went to them. Like, you need to feel like that's my person.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's, someone who's had plastic surgery by you. Yeah. I mean, it's funny you say that. I do feel like a team with you when we're doing the things that I want. One of the things that I'm getting done in the next few weeks here is my eyes, my eyelids.
You want to tell people why?
Yeah. Yeah. The reason why I'm having it done is because I have a cyst in my eye, and you tried your best.
Let's tell people why it's not already fixed.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually do tell. Your perception's funnier than mine.
So Mark does have a sty or a cyst in his eye. And how long has it been there for?
Gosh, we're probably like 3 months now.
Yeah.
When did you injected me with something.
Yeah. So we were going to do a steroid injection, which is pretty common for sties. And we brought you into the office. So I'm just gonna inject you with a little steroid. And you even warned me. You're like, I'm not very good with needles. This is literally one of the smallest needles I have.
Yeah.
It's gonna be okay. And right as this needle gets in the skin of your eyelid, you about come off the freaking table.
True.
I had to put my arm across your chest, all 300 pounds of you, and tell you, don't freaking move. I'm about to stab this needle in your eye.
It was intense.
And yeah,
my back was full sweat.
Yeah. Angry Dr. Howland came out for a second.
Which I don't think any other patients experienced.
Not many have.
I was kind of proud that I got it. Yeah. When it was all said and done, and I almost passed out from the pain.
No, and
just kidding. It didn't even hurt.
You were a strong boy. You did not get a sucker that day, though.
No, I did not. And no, I did not deserve it either. No, it was. It's an interesting thing, because we tried that. We got, we squirted it in there a little bit, and it's still there. So I'm probably, it's in this eye. If everyone wants to look, and it's actually, I'm kind of self-conscious about it, really, because even when I look back at some of the podcasts I've done, I'm like, man, I'm freaking recording these podcasts, and I got freaking my eyes 65% open. You know what I mean, or whatever the heck it is. But
you're the only one that notices it.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got a little Marco Polo thing where we talk to each other on. Yeah. And I would say 80% of those Marco Polos you mention your eye.
I know. I do.
You're like, oh, my eye today. And I'm like, dude, nobody's looking at it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and my family, I think genetically just has like eyelids that droop, a little bit. And so the one funny thing now is, the only way to get it out is to cut it out. And I can't only cut one eye. I'm going to look like I'm blinking all the freaking time. So, or winking at people. So we're going to do both eyes, and I'm going to do, I'm definitely going under.
Yes, you are.
Because we need a comatose mark to get this thing done. And honestly, I'm actually really excited about it. I'm excited that I'm going to have a little bit more vision, in both eyes. And I mean, I don't know if it's going to make me look younger or what, but
it's going to make you look less tired, and it's going to be good for you.
Yeah. I'll look a little bit prettier. So down the podcast, I'll look a little bit better, and you'll be the doctor that does it.
Well, I think that the interesting thing too is the reason I say bring up the Marco Polo and tell you you're the only one who sees it is that's the power of plastic surgery, though, is if it's important to you, if it's causing you to see it and notice it every day, even if nobody else is, it's important.
Yeah.
And it might not be important to everybody else. Like most people could say, get over it, man. Don't worry about it. No, it's important to you.
Yeah.
So let's fix it.
Yep.
And that, I don't know, that's the power of my job. That's why I love what I do. I get to make people feel better about themselves.
Yeah. No, you have a cool job. I mean, I love hearing about it. One thing, I've heard you speak or I've heard you just talk to people about it, you get to, it's not the same thing every day. Like it's different. That's one of the things I like about my jobs that I have is, it's every day, no day is ever the same, and you get to deal with, people and people, I mean, plastic surgery is an emotional thing, no matter what people say. At some level it's emotional. It might be super emotional, it might be just a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so you get to deal with people with their emotions, and then you get to actually make them happy most of the time. Mm-hmm. And so, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like you're helping people? You must.
I do. I will say my hardest, you always, I don't think this is like a unique thing for me. I think by and large, most doctors, most surgeons are good people. Yeah. And they have good hearts. And the most draining, hard thing is the patients that aren't happy.
Yeah.
Or, I can have a clinic with 40 people and I'll have 39 people that are thrilled, jumping up and down, giving me a hug, ecstatic.
Yeah.
And that one patient who's upset. That's what keeps you up at night.
Yeah.
And you just worry and it drives you crazy.
Do you think you have a perfectionist mentality when it comes to that? Is that why it bugs you so bad, or is it just?
I think that's part. I think that's part of being a plastic surgeon. Anyways, being a little bit of a perfectionist, but it's you want to be your very best, and plastic surgery is one of those things where I can do everything that I can do perfectly. The patient can follow all of the post-op instructions and everything they need to do perfectly, but the body is still uncontrollable sometimes. And sometimes it doesn't scar the way you want it to or heal the way you want it to, and you just get unlucky. Yeah. And that's really hard for some people to accept sometimes.
Yeah. So when you have people, do you do a lot of touch-ups after? Or is it like what percentage would you say?
It depends on the type of surgery.
Sure.
But I do a fair bit, and in plastic surgery, you kind of have to have a policy in place where you're like, hey, this is not an exact science. There's going to potentially be the need for touch-ups, and here's what it will cost. Yeah. Because that's the hardest thing for a lot of people is I just paid all this money for plastic surgery, and now I've got to pay more money to go do it right. Why wasn't it done right the first time?
Right.
And that's where you've got to be able to say, hey, look, this is not exact science, and it costs me money to operate. I've got to pay my nurses, I've got to pay my staff, I've got to pay an anesthesiologist, I got to buy supplies. Yeah. And so we've got fee schedules in place. My policy for almost all of my patients, all of my patients is if they've got an issue that I'm like, yes, I can see that needs to be fixed. I'm a perfectionist. I want that fixed. I typically don't charge my fee at all. Yeah. I'll charge them the cost of anesthesia and the cost of the supplies and stuff, and that's it. Yeah. The fee schedule really is in place for somebody who's going to come in and nitpick, be like, my areola is off about 1 millimeter, and you're like, okay, that's fine. We'll fix it. Here's the fee schedule. Yeah. But for most people, you just try to take care of them. Yeah. I think a lot of people are like that. I think there are a lot of surgeons though who aren't like that. And they'll charge full price every time. And I don't know, that bugs me.
Now, one thing that's super special about you, and I love this policy, and I hit it home with everybody that I refer to you, is that they have your personal cell phone, which honestly, I would never do that to my clients.
Get it?
Because obviously I'm in different industries, you know what I mean? There's less emotions involved in that kind of stuff. But you have a policy that when you work on someone, they can call you to your cell phone, and I'm with you a lot, and you always answer.
Every single patient, everyone. I don't like meet somebody who I'm like, oh, they're weird, I'm not giving them my cell phone. Every patient has my personal cell phone, and that came from my ex-wife's family, actually. So her uncle is a very gifted bariatric surgeon. He's since retired. His son is an orthopedic surgeon, and both of them were kind of mentors to me, took me under their wing as I was going through med school and residency. They let me follow them around, and both of them, I saw two things, is that their patients really respected them. Their staff really respected them. And I noticed it was that one of the things they both did was every patient got their personal cell phone. And I had never seen that before. Yeah. And I was like, I'm going to do that. I think makes a big difference. And I just taking out down that wall of having to call an answering service or call a nurse and be like, hey, I really need to speak to the doctor. It makes all the difference in the world, especially when you've got something that is, you feel like it might not be a true emergency, but you feel like it's an emergency. I have patients who have texted me just scared or called me just scared to death because they passed out, and it's scary, right? You don't want to, can you imagine you had to sit and wait for somebody to call you back?
Yeah.
So, and it's the 90-10 rule. You've got 10% of the people cause 90% of the problems.
Yeah.
I think one time in 5 years, I've had to tell somebody, this is my personal cell phone. You're abusing this privilege. Please limit your texts to absolutely necessary texts.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's totally fine.
Yeah. How'd they take that?
They were good. They were like, oh my gosh, you're right. I'm so sorry. And
good.
Yeah.
Because you always get that 50-50 chance of them being like, I don't give a shit. I'm going to call you whenever I
absolutely
don't feel good about myself. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So what's it like? Describe what it's like being a doctor and a businessman.
Confusing all the time. I would say I'm very secure about being a physician.
Yeah.
I'm very insecure about being a businessman.
Yeah.
Even though I have a little bit of training, I know that that's where my weaknesses are. I'm just flying by the seat of my pants. I feel like I hope this marketing campaign sticks, or I hope this business plan works. But I'm learning as I go, and it's fun. I love being able to just run my own schedule. I can imagine if I worked for a university or a hospital system and somebody told me when I had to go to clinic and what patients I had to see, I would I understand why physicians are burning out and losing their minds.
Yeah.
So I love that I have that control to be able to do this exactly how I want to do it.
No, that is definitely a benefit of being your own boss, or however people say that. And it should be a benefit. A lot of people, I think a lot of people out there look at their boss and like, oh, dude works when he wants. It's like, no, he works all the time.
Yeah.
There's always something you can do. You almost have to always be thinking of a marketing campaign. You always have to be thinking about pricing, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, for example, like how do you set your price in plastic surgery?
So that is something that I'm learning. Utah's unique in that Utah has always had fairly low plastic surgery prices compared to nationally across the board.
Yeah.
And the plastic surgeons in Utah have typically done a really good job of kind of maintaining that price. Nobody has really tried to outprice the other person or even undercut the other person too much. It's always been pretty consistent across the board. Prices have steadily been going up since I've been here in the last 5 years. They're still down compared to national average, but you're starting to see some surgeons come in and just really go crazy.
Yeah.
And some of them are doing it as a marketing thing where they're like, look, I'm the best there is, so that's why I'm 3 times as much as the other guy. And that works for some people. Some people see that and they're like, oh, he's the most expensive, he must be the best.
Yeah.
And really, by and large, plastic surgeons who are board certified, they're all about the same. Like, there's some nuances here and there. There's some things that somebody might do more of, so they're a little bit better than this person.
And
but
you mean skill wise, they're all the same.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a board certified plastic surgeon, you've had the training is pretty standard across the board. You're going to be able to give somebody fairly similar results. I mean, like I say, there is definitely some breakdown. But I tell patients, if you're going to be happy with just about any board certified plastic surgeon you go to. That's why you got to feel like whoever you pick is your person, Yeah. So if you bond better with this guy, great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Like, there's so much friggin' plastic surgery work here in Utah. I don't have room for 10 more of this guy's patients.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that I love about practicing here in Utah. I feel zero competition with any other plastic surgeon here in Utah because I believe that a rising tide raises all the boats, and there is so much work to be done here, and so much demand here that all of us are busy. I don't have time to take on 5 more of this guy's patients or 5 more of that guy's.
Right. And so one thing you mentioned is a board certified plastic surgeon. In your market here in Utah, how many non-board certified plastic surgeons make up that market?
Oh, I don't know the numbers or their percentage. What I will say is that is some of our biggest competition is people who practice plastic surgery but aren't actually plastic surgeons. And this is a controversial thing, right? So as a physician, you can pretty much do what you want if somebody signs a consent form, especially if you're doing it out of your office or at your own surgery center. And so you have a lot of people who are trained as oral surgeons or ENT docs or family medicine doctors, and they'll market themselves as cosmetic surgeons. And as the general public, you wouldn't know. Like there's plenty of guys that have websites and ads. I'm a board certified cosmetic surgeon. Like, oh, sounds legit. Well, they might have been a family medicine trained doctor and they're board certified in family medicine, and they took a 6-month course in how to do breast augmentation, and that's all they're doing. And it's scary. We've been able in the last 10 years to kind of change some of the laws and regulations here in Utah. Like now the law is you are supposed to say whether or not you're board certified and what your board certification is in. Those aren't as enforced as they could be.
Yeah.
And so as the public, you've got to kind of do your research. You've got to dive into that doctor's website and see where they trained and what they trained in. The easiest way to know if your surgeon is a board certified plastic surgeon is just ask them.
Right.
And B, look for the logo. There's an American Board of Plastic Surgeons logo, and the only people that are allowed to display that logo either in their office or on their website are people who are actually board certified members. So that's where I would start. Now, where it kind of starts to get gray and nuanced is some specialties do cross over into similar training. Like ENTs, ear, nose, and throat guys, they do facial plastic surgery as part of their residency training. Mm-hmm. So the guys at Utah Facial Plastics, for example, do a lot of rhinoplasty, a lot of facelifts, a lot of face stuff. And they're amazing. They're great at it. And that is part of their training that's in their wheelhouse. That's completely okay. And so where I have a problem is when guys who are not trained in those types of things start to do stuff that's outside of their training.
Right.
You know, if you were an ear, nose, and throat guy, say, and all you were doing were tummy tucks, like, come on, man. You weren't,
Yeah, it's not your jam.
yeah.
Isn't part of the problem with that too, though, is if they're doing tummy tucks, they're ear, nose, and throat guys, they're really not doing that many tummy tucks, so it's just like something they don't do a lot, right?
It depends. I mean, there are guys who they do a lot of them just because that's what they've made their practice.
Oh, okay.
And so, you know, maybe they do develop those skills.
Yeah.
But I'm biased. I'm a board certified plastic surgeon. I think that's who you should go to because you want somebody who that's what they trained in.
So kind of going more into like the business structure for some of my business listeners, like, are you an LLC? Are you a corporation? How did you set it up?
So I'm kind of a unique practice structure. I joined a group, which is Premier Plastic Surgery, and Premier Plastic Surgery is an LLC. And under that umbrella, so there's me and two other partners, and Steve Warnock and Rick Fryer. There's also Paul Watterson's, 3 other partners. Yeah. We all share office space. We share office staff. So our clinical nurses, we all share. And we share our office manager and our patient coordinators. Within that umbrella, each of us have our own PC. So Howland Plastic Surgery is its own thing, and it's an S corporation. And then the other guys have their own practices, and they've set theirs up. I think a couple of them are LLCs. I think the other one's an S corporation.
Because Premier is basically for you guys to share costs.
Correct.
Right. Do you all own it equally?
Yes.
Okay. And it's not a sellable LLC.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. And then I'm also a 25% owner of our Med Spa Clarity Skin, which is also an LLC, and Canyon Crest Surgical Center, which is also an LLC.
Yeah. And did you have to buy into those, or did they?
Those 2 entities I did buy into, yeah. And so what happened is when I first joined the practice, there were 3 other partners. Dr. Watterson had not gotten there yet. And there was one of the partners, Dr. Matoki. And we all knew he was probably retiring in about 5 years. Well, 1 year in, he was like, I'm done. And I'm retiring now, and you can buy me out. And the guys were like, oh, shoot, that's early. And so I wasn't a partner at this time. I had only been there a year. And so they put together, they had some guys come in and do an appraisal and put together an offer and said, we're going to buy you out for this. And I won't talk the numbers. That's what they did. And so then the partners came to me and they said, hey, this is what we bought Dave out for. Would you be willing to basically assume this loan as your buy-in? And so that's what I did. The 5-year loans. I think I'm 3.5 years into it. So I'm almost done with that buy-in. And then the nice thing is, they said we're gonna let you assume this loan, but we're gonna start giving you dividends immediately. So the actual real cost of the loan will be much less than what it was at the outset, since I've been getting dividends right immediately.
Yeah.
And so it's been a good decision. I have been really happy with it because as soon as I became a partner, I was able to help start making some of the decisions around how to run the practices. And we've gone through some tough times as a business, honestly. And especially with, we quarantined and we had to figure out how we were gonna go through that. We kept 100. We didn't fire a single employee through quarantine. We had to shut down the surgery center for almost 2 months. And so I've learned a lot about business real quick.
Yeah.
Just based on the times that we're in.
Now, with your employees, are most of them, are they salaried? Are they hourly? Are they paid by the piece rate? Like, how did you? It
depends. We have some salaried employees, especially, so like our people who have been there longer, like our office managers are salaried. And then depending on what type of employee you are, like nurses are typically hourly based on kind of average nurse rate. And then office staff are hourly as well. So.
Oh, cool. How much of dealing with employees do you get to do?
More than I want to.
I mean, say one wants to go on vacation. How do they? Because there's 4 partners.
Yeah.
So who approves that kind of stuff? Or do you leave it up to the manager?
That stuff we have separate managers for. So we've got a manager on the clinic side, and she handles all that stuff. We've got a manager on the clinics, the spa side, thank you, and then a manager on the surgery center side. And they all take care of those kind of day-to-day nuts and bolts things. I like to be an open door, though. And so I want every employee to feel like they can come and talk to me about anything. And sometimes that creates an issue, right? Because sometimes you get employees who jump over their manager's head to come talk to the boss or the owner. Yeah. And so that's been a hard thing to navigate sometimes, where they'll go get, it's like dealing with friggin' children sometimes, where they go and mom doesn't give them the answer they want, so they come ask dad.
Yeah.
And then it's even harder when maybe one of the partners is like, oh yeah, let's do that. And the other partner's like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, exactly. So do you end up governing kind of by a board? The managers report back to you guys as a group? Yeah,
so we try to give the managers their autonomy to make those decisions so that we don't have to. Like the best manager is going to make it so I don't have to make any of those decisions, right? And then I don't have to hear about any of them. So I know I have a good manager if I think that there's no drama.
Right.
Because we're dealing with 100 staff members, we're dealing with nurses, we're dealing with women and men and just people intermingling at work for 18 hours a day. There's going to be drama.
Yeah.
And so if I think there's zero drama, my manager's doing something right. When I start hearing about drama all the time, then I know I need to lock down my manager.
Yeah, something's going on.
Either I need to lock down my manager or I got a bad egg that needs to be taken care of.
So do your managers, do they look at a P&L? Are they allowed to look at that kind of stuff? Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so we do a monthly meeting with the med spa and the surgery center, and the reason we don't include the clinics is because one of the owners has his own practice separate from the group, and so we kind of do that separate. But the spa and the surgery center, they bring the P&Ls in every month. We go over any issues with the managers. We look at the P&Ls and where we're at. We talk about when and how a dividend needs to be processed if it does. And
yeah. So with the dividends, you just kind of like grow the cash until you guys feel like it's safe to do a dividend, or do you do it more on a regular basis?
Until it's safe. It's a very up and down market. We've had years where the med spa was just gangbusters and killing it, and the surgery center was struggling. The last couple of years, it's been the exact opposite, where the surgery center is just crushing it, and the med spa has dropped a little. Yeah. And so it just depends.
Yeah. Do you like that structure? It's probably a little traditional, right?
It is. It's a little. There's pros and cons to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Leave it at that.
Yeah.
Great. So when you guys get together as partners, when you look at let's take the med spa, right? Because the med spa is something you can duplicate, replicate over and over and over again. Are you guys thinking we should do that? We should put, it's Clarity, right? Mm-hmm. Clarity Spa should go all over the place, or should we just keep bolstering the one we have? Or
I think it should.
Yeah.
My partners would feel otherwise.
Now, why do you think it should, though?
Because I think that if that's something that can be duplicated as long as you put the right people in place, and it can be duplicated without needing the owner.
Yeah.
So for a long time, and the partners' thoughts on this has always been that people will come to the med spa because they'll want to go to that particular injector. They'll want to come and see that person. And I don't think that that's the case anymore. I don't think people give a crap who lasers them, who does their Botox, or even who does their lips. Because now that's not true for everybody. There are a lot of people who want that one specific person. Yeah. But when you're paying, $500 for Botox, and you've got somebody who is down the street from you versus somebody who is a 30-minute drive away, I mean, you're gonna if the difference between how they do it is sixes, you're gonna go across the street.
Yeah, and you kind of got the brand loyalty then.
Yeah. That was kind of one of their thoughts too, is I'm going to stick with my brand. It is that patients would stick with their brand, but I think that only goes so far.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to be brand loyal until you got to drive more than 45 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, talk about gyms, right? I mean, gyms, it's like I go to the freaking closest gym there is.
Yeah.
So
I would like to expand. We're looking at some areas for expansion. And I think that's something that we could do to improve at least the med spa side of things.
Yeah.
From the other business structure standpoint, I love a group aspect. I really do. I think there's synergy that can be given in a group of plastic surgeons that you can't get when you're an individual. And so like, I've had a lot of people ask me why I stay with this group. Why not just break off and do my own thing? Why not just build a Howland plastic surgery castle and go off? And the reason is I am dedicated to my partners and what they've taught me. And again, I think the synergies that a group brings are better than what an individual brings.
Yeah. Plus, there's a lot more work to be an individual.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and one thing that people don't realize is, you know, one of the major decisions that you have to make around business investment is time. You know, how much time is it going to take me to do my own practice? How much time am I going to have to spend, you know, hiring and firing people and making business decisions, looking at accounting. And when you have, you know, 3 other partners, there's 4 of you, you know, there's a lot of load you can share around.
Oh, yeah.
Plus, you bring in a lot more business if you have 4 people versus 1.
Exactly.
So knocking your operating costs down is huge in that scenario, I'd assume.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So to use your med spa, is it a feeder to you doing plastic surgery?
Yeah. So when it was originally, when they originally built it, it was more of a feeder for to send our surgery patients to the spa so that they had kind of something to go to. And now it's become kind of both, right?
Yeah.
We still send all of our surgery patients to the spa. You get a free treatment over at the spa if you get a surgery. But then we have a lot of people who are starting at the spa, getting non-invasive procedures done, and then end up coming to surgery because either the non-invasive isn't giving them as significant results as they want, or because that's just the next step.
Yeah. How did they decide which doctor to send them to?
So in our practice, it's our staff are trained to be very democratic, where they're like, look, all of our surgeons are great. You can see any of them. There are some surgeons who don't do certain things, and there are some surgeons who do all the things. And that was a sticking point for me when I actually joined this group. I had a buddy who left residency and joined this guy in Louisiana, and he found out like a year in that anytime somebody would call, this guy's office manager was and front desk person was his wife.
Right.
And he found out that anytime somebody would call and say, hey, I want to see a plastic surgeon, the wife would be like, great. And then she'd book him with the husband.
Yeah.
And not my buddy. And so he actually had to get like a bat phone that he gave, and he put that phone's number on his website, and he gave it to his wife, who anytime that phone rang, she knew it was a patient calling that they needed to schedule.
Yeah.
And he ended up leaving the guy and starting his own place. But that was a thing that was a sticking point for me, and my staff do a really great job. The other thing I will say is most people that call know who they want to see. Most people that call have done their research, and they've looked at pictures, and they've looked at Instagram, and they call and say, I want to see Dr. Howland, or I want to see Dr. Watterson.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people are like, hey, I need a tummy tuck. Who you got?
Right. So where does most of your business come from currently?
Word of mouth, social media, word of mouth.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, I would assume that's the best part of getting a practice set up, right? Once you're kind of integrated, you know, the more good surgeries you do, the more people recommend it towards you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you first start as a plastic surgeon, all the implant companies give you a half off their implant rate.
Right.
And so one of the things I did with that first year is undercut everybody on augmentation prices, and then ran a Google AdWords ad for, I think everybody was doing OGs for like $5,500. I think I was running like a $4,000 special, and it got some people in the door.
Brought the ladies in.
You've got a few people in the door. Not as much as I would have wanted.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of it for me was luck. And I actually give a talk to residents about the business of plastic surgery. And that's my first slide. Be lucky.
Right.
So here's what happened to me is I was really lucky. My partner was really friggin' unlucky. I was coming into this practice July 17th, and right around 4th of July, one of my partners, Rick Fryer, was in a horrible bike accident. Like punctured a lung, had a brain bleed, and went to the ICU. And I get a phone call a week before, and he says, "Hey, I'm in the ICU. I'm not going to be able to operate. I've got about 2 to 3 weeks worth of patients that need surgery and are scheduled for surgery. They're all yours if you want them." It's like, they need to meet with you and decide you're not an idiot, but
right.
They're all yours. That's huge. And most guys going into private practice plastic surgery, you don't have people waiting on your door for surgery day one. It takes some time for people to know you and then start coming into you and actually booking you for surgery. I mean, how many people are going to walk in the door and be like, "Oh, it's your first day? Yeah, I'll sign up for surgery."
Right.
So I've completely lucked out. Or like those first 2 weeks, I think I did like 30 grand in 2 weeks because of surgeries that this partner had booked.
Yeah.
And I thought I was killing it.
Yeah.
And then he came back to work and I was like, "Where'd all my patients go?" You had to kind of build it back up.
Yeah. So what's the hardest part about being a plastic surgeon?
Well, the hardest part, I would say that the hardest part is, again, those patients who you worry about.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just always gives you anxiety.
Yeah. What are you most worried about with them?
You want them to be happy. So when they're not, you always question yourself.
Yeah.
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 Even though you know you did everything right or everything you could, you question yourself. So in 5 years of practice, I've had one death, and there's just about every surgeon has to go through that.
Right. Can you tell us what happened with that?
What's that?
Can you tell us what happened with
that? Yeah, she they don't really know. She had a clot that was deemed to be unrelated to her surgery. But
was it during surgery or was it
no?
Post?
It was about a month out.
Okay.
So it was about a month later. And you know, you hear about that and you of course internalize that, and you have to deal with that.
Yeah. And
if you're there, you know, there are other doctors who deal with it regularly. I mean, you know, you're a critical care doctor, a trauma surgeon. That's all the time.
I flew on a flight with an emergency room doctor, and my gosh, the stuff he would say. I mean, it was like every day.
Yeah.
You know, almost every day he had someone die.
Yeah. When I was in residency, I just had a rotation on the ICU, and my rotation was just awful. I had 5 patients die in that month, and it wasn't anything wrong that I was doing. It just happened to be kind of a bad month. Patients coming in and they were sick patients.
Yeah.
And so in training, most people in training go through some of that. You have patients die, and you've got to learn as a physician to compartmentalize that so that you can continue to do your job. But you also have to deal with it. A big part of healthcare right now that they're figuring out is, oh boy, we've really mentally screwed up some of our physicians. We better figure out how to help them deal with these things.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be hard. It'd be really hard to watch someone pass away or to be part of that. Or, I mean, it's like all of us, we have a grandparent die or a friend die, and, you as a plastic surgeon become friends with most people, right? On some level.
I do become friends with a lot of my patients.
Yeah, absolutely.
You never forget. I'll tell you one story that's always stuck with me. As I was on that ICU rotation, right? This guy comes into the hospital. He's 10 years out from a heart transplant. And our cardiovascular surgeons, with their transplant patients, they would have them come in once a year, stay overnight so that they could monitor the heart, get some blood work, and then be on their way. And these were typically the easiest patients to handle. Like, they were all healthy and you just monitor them and make sure they're good. This guy, the only reason he was even in the ICU that night is there were no available beds on the floor. So they put him in the ICU. It was the easiest orders I ever had to write. I was like, regular diet, no meds, we're going to take blood draws in the morning. This is easy.
Yeah.
And about 2:00 in the morning, I get a knock on the door. And one of the nurses frantic, and she's like, he's coding. I'm like, who? It's the guy that we just admitted. And I come in, and this guy has flatlined and coding, and I've got to intubate him and get a tube down his throat. And the on-call anesthesiologist is busy in the operating room. He can't come and help. And so we're paging other residents to come and help. And it's just me covering this floor right now. And so we start doing chest compressions. We run a code on the guy, and we worked on him for 2 hours till he passed away. I mean, he technically was dead the whole time, but we worked on him for 2 hours trying to bring him back.
Yeah.
And I think I sat in my room and just cried for an hour. And I was waiting till the next day when I knew the cardiovascular surgeon, who was his surgeon, was going to be there to round on his patients. And I thought this guy was just going to lay into me. The hell did you do?
Right.
And he was like, that's what happens. And I'm like, what? It's like, yeah, heart transplants, they go long enough, they get massive coronaries, and they just die.
Wow.
And it's like, sorry you had to deal with that. You were unlucky. He was unlucky too.
Do you remember how you were feeling the moment you knew it was done? So you work on this guy for 2 hours, right? Like during that 2 hours, when did you know?
Not till after.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, you stop when you're like, okay, it's not going over, but it's almost a delayed reaction. Like, it doesn't fully hit you for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of get that. I've, I want to say I've saved a couple of people's lives, but I've given some Heimlich maneuvers, and I have saved a few people's lives.
You have.
And it's you're right. It's like hours later, you're like, 'cause you're so intense in the moment, right? The adrenaline's pumping. You got a job to do. You focus in, get narrow, and then later on, man, it's just like an emotional freaking dump.
Yeah, you're like, holy cow.
Yeah,
that just happened.
Yeah. Such a wild. I mean, yeah, you just don't get that working a normal desk job, right?
No, you don't.
No, you don't.
And I don't get it now as a plastic surgeon. That's one of my crazy stories. But there's you deal with somebody who actually sees that on a regular day-to-day basis. I can't imagine the amount of compartmentalization and emotional fortitude that takes.
Yeah, you gotta get a little numb.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So in your practice now, you're pretty generally, you go to work happy every day, right?
Oh, I love my job, dude.
Yeah.
It's pretty stupid. I got a grin on my face every day.
Yeah.
Walking into work, because I just feel very blessed. Like, I feel I have a lot of friends who are unhappy with their career.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people who are just unhappy with their career. And I feel very blessed that I made that decision which was a hard decision to walk away from real money and do this thing that I felt called to for whatever reason.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Because you're right. Your dad runs a very successful business to this day. Mm-hmm. And you could have been like me a little bit. You know, I worked for my dad and ended up buying his business from him, and you were the heir apparent. Mm-hmm. And you chose your passion, which is actually really admirable and cool.
Oh, best decision I ever made.
And with you too, I mean, one cool thing about you is, you hear doctors' hours, right? Your hours are actually, they're pretty normal, right?
Mine are, because I'm a plastic surgeon. I get to set them.
Yeah.
So with elective surgery, I operate usually about 7:30 to I don't like operating past 3.
Yeah.
I think my staff loves me. My partners are like, oh, he's the lazy one. No, I'm just the smart one, fuckers.
Yeah.
And I can say that on this podcast, right?
Oh, absolutely. This is the non-edited podcast.
So I set my own hours, and it's taken me. I still work my tail off. I work 80 plus hours a week, because while I may not be operating, I'm doing business or calls or something else. But I love it, and I am able to set things kind of exactly how I want. Clinic is 9 to 5. Yeah. My OR day is typically 7:30 to 3:30. Yeah. And I can structure it too based on how I need it for my kids. So, for example, my daughter just made the cheer team for high school, and I know that, and I have my kids every single Thursday, and I know that Fridays, especially during the school year, she's going to need to get to school early for cheer. And being able to be there and be present with my kids is crucial to me. That's one of the most important things in my life. And so I had just started in the last month where Fridays, which is typically an operating day for me, we're going to start late. We're going to start at 9:30 so that I can get my daughter off to cheer where she needs to be.
Yeah.
And also when I did that, my staff was like, oh, does that mean we're going to be going till like 5:36? I'm like, nope, we will not book anything past 3. And I think those kinds of things are important, not just for like your own sanity, but it's important for your staff as well. And I don't know. You have the drive to work your tail off, right? But you're hiring people who aren't committed to working their tail off at your pace.
Right.
And so you got to treat them well. You got to give them incentive to match your energy and your pace.
Yeah, because it's just like any other employee. You can burn them out. Mm-hmm. Burning employees out is really bad. Mm-hmm. So
I try not to do that.
I don't think you do at all, because every time I'm around your staff, they're loving on you.
I try to. Well, they get paid too. No.
They do get paid. Yeah, but there's a balance to that. Like with my employees, I pay them, but I'm also their friend.
Yeah,
sometimes mentor.
Yeah, I take great pride in being close with my staff.
Yeah.
And like honestly, I think one of the most hurtful things to me would be if I knew that an employee left because they didn't like me.
Yeah.
Or if they had a problem with me.
Yeah.
That would be hard for me.
Yeah. Now, the thing is, the path to a plastic surgeon is just like any other doctor, right? You're going to go get your undergraduate, you're going to go to med school, you're going to go try a whole bunch of different things and then decide which practice you're going to do, mm-hmm. right? Outside of someone wanting to aspire to be a plastic surgeon, what would be your best advice you would give just in general?
What do you mean outside of being a plastic surgeon?
Well, I mean, so business advice. So, a lot of people listen to this because it's kind of in the business category, uh-huh. right? When you're going into business and you're going to be a doctor, I guess, in that realm, what's your best advice you can give to people? Like what should they expect? What should they look for? What things did you not know before you got into practice? Sure.
I was, first and foremost, follow your passion, which we kind of touched on here. Like if you don't love it, don't do it.
Yeah.
Just don't think you're going to do it enough until you do love it. Just if you don't love it, don't do it. Number 2, this is something I learned and took to heart early on. Burnout is real. Like, physician burnout is a huge thing, but I think burnout in any profession is a real thing. And we had a guy come and give a talk, and he said, you need to shut it down every 6 weeks. He said, go on a vacation, do something every 6 weeks. Like, you don't have to go to Hawaii for a week. He said, but take 3 days and go to Park City, or, take 3 days and just shut your phone off and be home. He said, but every 6 weeks, do something. And I've done that and taken that to heart from the start. My partners look at me like I'm nuts, because most surgeons, especially in those first 5 to 10 years of practice, are just head down, balls to the wall, no vacation, just grinding. And me, I'm like, all right, I'm going to Norway next week. And 4 weeks after that, I'm going to Iceland. And they're like, you are either just financially a moron or what is going on? And for me, my sanity and my happiness are worth way more than the extra 30, 40 grand I'm going to make by taking a couple extra weeks off.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Those are my two biggest words of advice.
Yeah, no, it's excellent advice. It really applies in every industry.
Mm-hmm.
You need to make sure you don't burn out. I think even in America, right, in the United States, like we burn workers out here.
Mm-hmm.
You hear about Europe, and and even me, I'm guilty, man. They're like, yeah, man, we work for like 4 hours, take like 3 hours off, maybe do a couple more hours. I'm just like, your efficiency rating's horrible, because I'm a OCD efficiency guy. But no, I appreciate that advice. I think it's great. I think people do need to have, people say work-life balance, but it's like, really what you need to do is look at your capabilities and say, when do I burn out? How do I prevent it? And yeah, it's excellent advice.
Yeah, I work my tail off when I'm there, and then I party hard.
Yeah, and play even harder.
Yeah.
I know. I like to play with you.
Yeah, I know. It's fun.
Well, my friend, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, this is awesome. My first plastic surgeon.
And businessman.
And business guy.
Thanks for listening to the President McCormack Podcast, brought to you by McCormack Foundation, Saxton Fund, ADP Lemco, and Professional Floor Systems. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and keep up with Mark on Instagram @President McCormack.